Hello, folks. Welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. I appreciate you tuning in. I hope you are doing well, staying safe, taking care of those closest to you, and finding joy in your day-to-day. Finding joy myself. By the time you will have listened to this, my birthday will have just passed, and I am 37 years old, or as I like to call it, the Kevin Smith year. And actually, I said that at the 37-second mark of this recording. So I'm officially, like, if anybody here has seen Clerks, I did a lot of yesterday going, I'm 37. I also did some stand-up yesterday. I want to give a shout out to my buddy Danis Parafan, friend of the show, for having me on Last Call Comedy. So that was a good time. I'm looking forward to, this is something I've been thinking about a lot now. Now that we're seemingly at I personally am starting to feel closer, safer, and closer. Maybe even not so. Just like my general day-to-day reality is that I feel a lot more confident in going out and trying to do more stand-up sets in the near future. I do hope to get some more shows as well, but just to start like getting back into a routine of getting up on stage regularly. And I've also, this past weekend, not only did we do some killer backdoor barbecue shows, I did tech at the pit for a very cool improvised like Dream Odyssey improv show called The Awakening. That was directed by Chris Griggs, who I remember from my days at the Laughing Devil Comedy Club. Just really like starting to like, I love having multiple days of multiple shows and doing a lot of different things and being out, making, being creative. If I'm not the center of attention, I like being in those support roles up in the booth at the Pit Loft. So I am really thankful that I have that community and that crew that I am around now. That it's very exciting, and appreciate everybody who comes out, supports Backdoor Barbecue, or supports this podcast. I really want to do a live version of this show at some point. If anybody listening to this in New York City would think that would be cool, feel free to send me a message at my website, which is awesomedisaster.com. I'd love to gauge some interest for who might be interested in doing that. And before we get into the show today, really excited to get to share this conversation with you. I got the opportunity to talk to Greg Norton, who's our guest on the show today. Greg was the bass player in what I personally think is one of the seminal punk rock bands of the era, Husker, who many people are familiar with with albums like Zen Arcade. I was very thrilled and excited to find out that Greg has a new band, goes by the name UltraBomb. He's playing bass in this band. The singer and guitarist is a gentleman by the name Finney McConnell from the Canadian folk punk band The Mahones, and the drummer is Jamie Oliver of the UK Subs. And they have a new record that's available now wherever you get your music. You can listen to this. It is called Time to Burn, and the band again is called UltraBomb. And we're going to talk a lot about this new album today. And I personally find this is to be the kind of a new take, an updated version of everything that I love about Greg's previous bands. There is a real anthemic, tuneful quality, huge, likely catchy quality to these songs. Really invoke a lot of feeling, and it's sort of like, I think, a continuation of the sort of like anthemic, tuneful punk rock that Greg was doing back in the 80s. And we're going to talk, you'll hear a bit about how this album came to be and how it sort of was pieced together and came together a lot quicker than I, or probably some other listeners, might have imagined. So there's a lot of very cool, interesting music and shop talk to discuss here with Greg. Again, if you guys enjoy listening to this conversation, you'll love UltraBomb's new album, Time to Burn, which is available now. And for any Husker Du fans out there, there's a surprise announcement for you for Record Store Day, which will be very exciting for anybody who's looking for some new, rare Husker Du material. But we're going to talk a lot about Greg with his new album and with UltraBomb. And if you enjoyed this podcast and feel like you know a friend who would be interested in this as well, you can send them to awesomedisaster.com. That has links to everywhere you can get this podcast. And I will go right into our interview now, and we're going to talk to Greg Norton about his new band, UltraBomb, and their album, Time to Burn. Love that. That name so much, Greg. That's such an amazing name. I like that you're kind of like embrace the name of your dog is like you're in kind of embracing your musical past. I like that.
Yep.
Well, dude, I'm so excited to chat about this record, and like obviously I have a lot of things that I want to I want to let you know, because I kind of did my college years were sort of like my punk rock. I did my punk rock like doctorate in SST Records and Fat Wreck and all of those
Oh, wow. Okay.
all of those great all those great bands. So I spent a lot of time listening to that stuff while I was in college. But I want to say my first impression of the UltraBomb album, which is out now, is that to me it sounds like almost like a perfect kind of coalescence of everything that you've worked on up until this point, and then it's kind of just it's a perfect it's like perfect example of everything that I think you do and do well, and your past work has. I really the songs are just amazing, man. I really really enjoyed this album, Greg.
Oh, that. Thank you very much. Uh, I actually, all three of us were so blown away by how how easy it came together. It's crazy. So, the backstory is I was in a band in Minneapolis here called Porcupine.
Mhm.
Uh, the guitarist, things just didn't work out, so he decided to go a different direction with the band. Uh, Finney saw that I was no longer in Porcupine and messaged me and said,
Mhm.
"Hey, how would you like to be in a band with myself and the greatest punk rock drummer that on the planet, Jamie Oliver?"
Mhm.
And I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds great." And evidently, at the same time, he had texted Jamie and said, "Hey, how would you like to be in a band with me and Greg Norton from Husker Du?" And Jamie's like, "Sure, that sounds great." Uh, and so that's basically how that came together.
Mhm.
And that was, so actually, no, I want to say that was probably almost 2 years ago now. But
Mhm.
um, what happened next is the interesting thing is that Finney was going to be, he was playing some solo shows in Germany,
Mhm.
and he was in Berlin for a stretch of time. Jamie happened to be there at the same time, filling in on drums for a German punk band, and had some gigs booked. And I was like, "Oh, holy shit! You guys are going to be in Berlin at the same time." And Finney had studio time booked. And I'm like, "Oh man, I should probably try to get out there."
Mhm.
Because initially we were just thinking like, all right, well, you were in, you know, you've got the Mahones, you've got the UK subs, you've got Husker Du. We'll just get together and have fun and play, Mahones and Husker Du and UK sub songs.
Yeah.
And that was the initial idea. So I booked a flight to Berlin. Uh, Jamie picks me up at the airport. First time I had ever met him. We
Mhm.
had chatted a couple of times on Messenger. And the next day at the studio, Finney shows up, and it was actually the first time I had ever met Finney, even though that we had been um, Facebook friends or whatever for several years and had been messaging back and forth.
Mhm.
And Finney's like, "Oh, I got all these great riffs," and so we would just start working on a riff, and it would click, and we would hammer out an arrangement and run through it a couple of times, and then we were comfortable with it, and we had the studio engineer record it.
Mm-hmm.
We wrote 4 songs the first day. We wrote the next 6 the second day. So we had our 10 songs. The third day, Jamie had a gig, so it was just Finney and I in the studio. And I'm like, well, I've got all these lyrics, and so I
Mm-hmm.
gave him my folder of lyrics, and he looked at it, and all of a sudden he's like, I've got the whole record figured out. And he's like, this, and this will work out great. And then on the fourth day, he went in and sang the whole record and nailed it. And so literally in 4 days, we created it, and recorded it. Uh, and then we threw in Sonic Reducer at the end, just for the hell of it, because we all love that song.
Mm-hmm.
And and Jamie was the only one who actually had ever played Sonic Reducer in a like with somebody else in a band before.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Finney and I had just basically kind of learned it in the studio, and I sang it, and we nailed it. And I, right away we're like, holy crap! We all thought it's a punk rock masterpiece. What did we do here? You know?
Wow. So it really together in the studio that quickly. That's
Yep.
a that's insane. Because normally, like you think of the way bands like used to work, and probably the way a lot does nowadays, is that everything is worked out like well in advance, and then you head into the studio. But basically, like just your sheer just like artistic wizardry and like chemistry between all of you, just this album just materialized in 4 days. That's amazing. That's so cool.
Yep. And actually, I think sometimes artists get way too bogged down if they have too much time to work on something.
Hmm.
Uh, it. I think there are too many musicians out there that don't understand the difference between when something is finished, and they're striving for something to be perfect. And
Hmm.
perfect's never going to happen. You need to go like, oh wow, that's it. We finished that is, and it's awesome. you know
Yeah, that's something I have to remind myself a lot of, because it keeps me from even getting past like page one for a lot of things, like when like writing and stuff like that. Sometimes I just like
oh,
to
for sure, yeah. Hmm.
remind myself, like, bang it out, tweet and tweak later. And it's now that I think about some of the other musicians I've talked to, like all of my so many of my favorite songs, or so many of the favorite songs I've written, like are just like done like super quickly. Can I ask you about one song in particular, if you have any memory of how this came about? The title track, Time to Burn," because this, I know it, and it's the first song on the album, but it really kind of like blew my hair back when I hear it, because I just love those like huge anthemic, uh, open chords in that song. Like it really makes me want to just like pump my fist and like hug a stranger, man.
Right. uh Finney's background, uh I mean, he's classically trained, and as he puts it, he's an Irishman, so he likes to write these songs with that have, like, an intro, and this big build, and then the overture at the end. uh, that came together really quickly in the studio. And the
Hmm.
funny thing is when he was doing that, was the first song that he sang. And I had to tell him, it's like, you're 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 subconsciously trying to sound like Husker Du. Like,
Uh huh.
back off on the Husker Du and just be Finney. you know
Hmm.
um, he was kind of doing a lot of like Bob vocal inflections and stuff like that. And it's like,
Sure.
we're not a Husker clone band here. This is its own thing. So uh no, Finney definitely has a knack for finding that thing where, as he puts it, like, people like put their hands together or pump their fists, or whatever. He he's got a knack for that, and I love it.
Oh my god, yeah, absolutely. Like I feel this way especially about like when I listen to his other band, the Mahones, and that sort of like there's something about like that sort of like anthemic, especially I feel like Irish music in particular has always kind of like really struck a chord in my heart. There's just something about that music from that region that really like resonates, I think, with the human condition.
Right.
So he's spectacular with that, and yeah, and again, just those huge like those like huge big chords. Like I don't know if you remember like the first time you what your if you bass was the first instrument you picked up or if you played something else, but there's just something kind of like very emotionally immediate about like just picking up a guitar and hitting like a big open G chord or a big E power chord that like just really taps into like some like lower like id part of like primal part
Oh,
of the human
oh,
brain.
absolutely. Bass was my first instrument, main instrument. I mean, anything else is just I dabble in, right? But
Mhm.
uh, I love open chords. I love to having strings drone while you're playing another note, uh,
Mhm.
and you get that all of those harmonics going. Um, it's like a huge influence on me as as Husker was first starting out was Clint Conley from Mission of Burma, his
Uh-huh.
bass playing and the way he chords the bass and things like that, and even and Peter Hook to a certain extent as well, but no, I just love the feeling that that generates
Yeah.
like in your body.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, and there's so many of those moments like all over this record. So you guys kind of like this collaboration comes together really quickly. You create this excellent album, and then what did and then you're like, well, what do we do next? What happens next after you just
well,
realize like, oh my
actually,
god,
what
this record's
happened
great.
next was a comedy of mishaps, really. Uh, so we recorded in September of 2021, and the plan was like, okay, well, let's uh, get the record mixed right away, and then there were delays in getting it mixed. Uh, Finney started working on it in Toronto. Jamie ends up finishing it in London. We're also at that point. We're like, well, let's get out and play some shows. So we
Mm-hmm.
we booked a handful of dates in Canada, and then uh, we got screwed up because Jamie couldn't get uh, a visa into Canada. Basically, they didn't tell him that he needed a visa when he booked his ticket, and then he shows up at the airport and they're like, well, where's your visa? And he's like, well, they told me I didn't need one. And they're like, nope, you do. So that got
Oh
scrapped, and
no.
then we pushed that back, and we were going to do some dates in England, and then that got ultimately got screwed up as well. um, so we were then shooting for a summer run last year, and that's when I found out I had prostate cancer, and
Oh no. I'm sorry.
so that tour got scrapped. We did play one show in Minneapolis, which was literally 5 days before I went in for prostate surgery, and that was at the Hook and Ladder Club in Minneapolis
Mm-hmm.
for one of their summer festivals, and the show was great, and the review from it was incredible, and so we had my surgery. I'm all good. As the doctors tell me I'm cancer free, which is excellent news. So uh, now we're just getting ready to finally take this out on the road this May. We've got an 18 date 18 shows in, I think, 20, 21 or 22 days booked
Uh-huh.
for the end of May. And that culminating in two shows for the punk rock bowling. So
Oh, very cool.
very exciting.
That's in Vegas, yeah. Punk rock
Yep.
bowling. Very, very cool. That'll be awesome. Well, I'm so glad that your surgery was successful. I cancer runs in my family, so have I know it. That's never easy to deal with. So I'm glad that you're doing better, Greg. Happy to
Thank you.
happy to hear that,
Yeah, me
and
too.
happy, yeah, and happy to hear that. You have something. There's something on the horizon now. This run.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So touring that nowadays with Ultra Bomb, how does the machine of touring compare to back in like when you were in Husker Du? Because I imagine now it's a little bit different. Husker Du was like back in the like just wild west of punk rock and DIY. So like,
Exactly. Yep.
mm-hmm,
You know, uh, when Husker first started touring, basically you would get out on the road and you would, network through people, and there'd be a lot of phone calls from payphone booths to see what was happening, having to actually physically mail things to people. So there's like a time lag delay. Uh, it literally was the Wild West, because if there was a town that had a club and a scene that supported what you were doing, you wanted to get there,
right,
and you would make a point to get out there. Uh, Now it's crazy because you know everything is advanced. People to do everything on the internet. Everything it's in a way to get noticed, uh, in a world where people will just go to something that is being streamed to them. They'll click on one thing and they'll listen to it for 5 seconds, and then click to the next track, and then click to the next track. It's very different. Uh,
mm-hmm,
it's crazy the way that social media drives things as well. Um, so we've got really good people working with us. We have good people behind us and advancing all of these things, and we're playing real good venues.
mm-hmm,
I just hope people like have a long enough attention span to go like, oh, hey, I think I actually want to go see that for real,
yeah,
and we'll show up and pay the price of admission and come walk through the door. Um,
mm-hmm,
Back I worked. So in Husker Du, there were many shows that we played where I actually ended up like being the door guy, taking people's monies, or
uh-huh,
take and because the club didn't have anybody to like do that, and it's like, all right, fine,
sure,
I'll work the door, and it's like, no, it's $5 to get in, and it's like, oh no, I just need to talk to like so and so in the back room. They're just shooting pool. It's like, that's great, $5, and you can go talk to that guy. You know,
right,
and now, um, from what everybody that I've talked to, they were saying like pre-COVID, advance ticket sales were the thing. Everybody would buy their tickets in advance, and shows
mm-hmm,
would sell out. But then with COVID, you had all these tours canceling, and so people stopped buying tickets in advance. And
right,
now that basically the floodgates are open again, everybody is on the road. So people still aren't buying advance tickets because they're like, well, let's just wait and see what our options are, because there are so many people coming through town. So
mm-hmm,
you need you need to get those advanced ticket sales so the club is comfortable that they're going to do all right.
Right.
Uh, but then you are really reliant on that walk up business the night of the show, um, to know that you're going to do okay. It's
Sure.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine you find yourself like trying to like promo dates, like literally right up until you're about to walk on stage almost. Walk on
Oh, pretty
stage
much.
almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh no. I know exactly what you mean. Like from the world of comedy, which I've been in for a number of years now. Like I remember just like literally like standing outside the venue like 15 minutes before showtime, like being my own barker, which is not to my skill set. Like
Yeah.
I'm pretty introverted, but it's like, oh well, it's gotta happen. I know it. I know exactly what you mean. I worked door on plenty shows that I would like. I'd take people's money and then I would go and perform in in front of them and like do crowd work and stuff. So
Hmm.
that is my I love being on stage, but over I have like stress dreams still about like being 10 minutes before showtime and the room's empty. Like I literally think about that all the
Right.
time.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. It's like, a lot of times, like you look out and you don't see anybody near the front of the stage, and they're like, "Oh no, no, there's a good crowd here. Don't worry. They're just all outside right now. They'll be in." And and you start playing it, and people will filter in and come in. So,
Mhm.
um, I actually I think this tour is going to do really well. We have the British band, the Barstool Preachers, in support
Mhm.
on all of these dates, and their new record is awesome. It actually just debuted at number 13 in the UK charts.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
so maybe by the time we like hit the road with these guys, it'll be in the top 10, and we can go like, oh yeah, we've got like a top 10 UK act supporting us on tour. It's awesome. So hopefully people will like us too.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, totally. Are you playing any UK dates on this upcoming run?
No, this is just the US. So we're starting in Minneapolis, down basically kind of heading down the Mississippi River to New Orleans and over through Texas, the Southwest to California, and then Vegas. And one show after the punk rock bowling in Denver, Colorado, on the way home. And plans are to try to do UK, Europe, UK, Scotland, Ireland dates this coming fall.
Very, very cool. I bet those will go off, and especially because when you were talking to how this record came together in Berlin, it seems like Berlin loves their punk rock nowadays. Like
Oh,
there's
for
so
sure.
many
Yeah.
cool
It
bands
was
that
my first
have
trip
come
to
out of.
Berlin, too. I'd never been to Berlin before. And yeah, it's Berlin is a fantastic city for punk rock, and the punks there are magnificent.
Uh
Um,
huh.
it's pretty awesome to just to get out and experience. And it was interesting. A lot of the punk clubs are actually on the eastern side, what was East Berlin. Um, it was cool. Yeah, I mean, I was only there for 4 days, and we were basically in the studio for most of that time, so didn't
Mm-hmm.
really have a great chance to get out and explore the city. But I loved it. I thought it was awesome.
That's amazing. If you can, I don't know if this would make sense for your routing, but I feel like you would do well in Hamburg. I'm not sure how familiar you are with like German soccer culture, but St. Pauli is like the football team that all the like if basically if punk rock was a soccer team, it would be FC St. Pauli. Like all the punks in Hamburg
Okay.
love this team, and they're like super like anti-racist, anti-fascist, like anti-homophobia, anti-transphobia. Like they check like basically if anti-flag played was a soccer team, it'd be this team.
Oh,
So
that's
I feel
awesome.
like there's
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like you could absolutely do well in
Husker
Hamburg.
played Hamburg a couple of times, and the very first time we played there, it was pretty interesting because we were just it was just the three of us with a road manager and a guy to help on stage who
Mm-hmm.
were both English. We were just traveling in a small van, and we got there and we basically were doing our own stage setup. So that like all these punks were standing around and we set up and then we started to play. And it took the audience a few songs to realize like, oh shit, this is the band that we like came to see. And we were talking to some people afterwards and they were like, oh, from like listening to Land Speed Record and Zen Arcade, and we thought like Husker Du were like these like real hardcore punks that would be like all dressed in leather and with big mohawks and and at first we just thought you guys were the roadies and we're just warming up the audience and it was funny. It actually Grant and I walked through the um in front of the stage after the show, and there were a couple of Husker Du buttons that looked like they got stamped on the floor. Like these guys aren't punks. So,
Oh my
but
God,
like D Boone said, punk is whatever we make it to be, right? Whatever you want it to be.
100%. I agree with that sentiment completely. Something else I've always carried with me, like when I started getting into this music when I was a kid, is um, and this is gonna sound really lame, but one of Blink 182's DVD, there was a little clip with Mark Hoppus like, yeah, I don't have like tattoos or piercings. It's not punk is not like a uniform or costume. There's
Exactly.
like, it's like it's a lot of other things. It's a feeling. It's a set of ethos. It's a lot of stuff. But yeah, you guys
Couldn't agree
never
more.
really. Yeah, and like you guys like never. You guys were like your early stuff is like very fast speed. That's sort of like da 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 kind of hardcore punk. But even like when you start getting it and doing like Zen Arcade or even into when you eventually got onto Warner Brothers, those were all still like very tuneful, fast songs with like great hooks and a lot of heart. Like you guys were always punk, no matter
Right.
what you.
I always said that Husker Du was hardcore that you could whistle.
Yeah, exactly. Like you guys were hardcore, but like you could write songs.
Right.
which
That
which
too.
is not something
Yeah.
which I love lots of hardcore punk bands, but not all of them can do that. Well, something I on kind of on that subject, something I've wanted to ask you, um, and I know we're hopping back and forth here a bit, but there's just a lot I want to ask you about. Um, so from what you were saying for this Ultra Bomb record, you were the primary lyricist. Like the lyrics came from a lot of your folders. So when you were like writing these lyrics, kind of like what were you kind of like thinking on and going through mentally at the time? Like where were you at in your head when you were writing these lyrics?
Uh, you know, so for the last 3.5 years, I've been working in a flour mill
Huh.
in Minnesota here,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean it's a large flour mill. The wheat comes in, it gets ground up, it gets turned into flour. It's very loud, it's very hot, everything is always shaking. And I was on the night shift, so I worked from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Uh, and had a lot of time to just kind of by myself. Uh, some some things, came from um, podcasts that I had listened to. Some things came from just random weird, like almost like shower thoughts. It's like, oh, what, you know, ruminating on just like certain like oddities of reality, right? And
Yeah.
and some were definitely from the heart, from personal interrelationships and stuff like that. Uh, some of the songs were fully realized all at once, and a lot of them though were kind of parts that I would come up with, and then eventually would sit down and kind of put those parts together. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's, I don't know. The creative process is a weird thing, right?
Yeah, totally. Because a lot of it is just kind of like, s just kind of like being in your own head a lot of
Right.
times, and just kind
Well,
of
you
mulling
said
over.
you do comedy, so I'm sure
Mhm.
it's like those little observations that you make about life, where it's like, and so it's like you turn the perspective around, or twist it in a way to make people think about it, hopefully in a better way. I don't know.
Yeah, kind of like like you're sort of like expressing your own reflection, and it's probably maybe like lining up with maybe someone else's kind of similar observations, and that's where like
Yeah.
that's where like you relate to people. That's what I've always loved about like my favorite comedians, my favorite jokes, like really kind of like really like I relate to in a very like personal way,
Right.
even if it doesn't seem necessarily like a very universal experience at the all the
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. So
And
yeah. Yeah. Mitch Hedberg he was from Minnesota. He's definitely, that guy was so talented, and it's so sad that we lost him. But I just loved his outlook. Right.
uh-huh. Yeah, he's my favorite comedian of all time.
Oh, right on.
I loved
Well, there
Mitch.
we.
Yeah.
Mine too. Cheers.
Yeah, he's a big cheers, absolutely. And he's again fellow Minnesotan, so they he was really one of a kind. I am bummed that I never got to see him live.
Yeah, me too.
But he's yeah, he was so funny. So something else I wanted to ask you in terms of your approach to similar to writing to like songwriting. Do you feel like your approach to playing bass on songs has changed substantially going from Husker Du into UltraBomb?
Uh, Not really. I mean, I'm not classically trained.
Mhm.
I learned by ear. I play differently than a lot of bass players do, because that's just the way I play.
Mhm.
Uh, and it's interesting, when the record first came out and played it for somebody, and they were like, "Oh wow, all the great Husker Du bass lines in there," and I'm like, "Well, actually, I think those are Greg Norton bass lines. I wasn't trying to be Husker Du. I was just being me." So,
Mhm.
um, I mean, I had a lot of diverse influences as I was growing up musically,
Mhm.
and and I think that kind of shows through what I try to do. I mean, a lot of times I'm trying to do something that I hear in my head, doesn't necessarily translate the same way that I thought it would, but it turns out the way it does, and it works.
Mhm.
I don't really know how to explain that, but um,
No, yeah, I think I kind of understand kind of what you're going for. It's like we are kind of like the sum of our parts a little
right,
bit, right? It's like everything that you find cool in how people play bass, like it kind of eventually starts coming into how you play that instrument. Especially like I've always wondered because I've played I've done a bazillion things, so um especially like I've always played bass in bands where it's only been one other guitarist
hmm
as well. Do you find yourself have you always ever found yourself trying to like um make up for the lack of a second guitar, or kind of like play a certain way so that it sounds fuller because you only have three people?
actually no, but I mean, all the bands that I've ever been in have actually always been three pieces. But so Husker was the first band I was in, and it was the first band that Bob Mould had ever been in. Uh,
Hmm.
and just the way that we ended up playing together filled out the sound, and it sounded like uh, uh, that there was an additional guitar player in there, uh, blending how I was, playing in kind of an upper register on the bass, and the way that Bob was playing, it sounded like three people instead of two people.
Hmm.
Uh, so I've never consciously like went like, oh well, I need to do this to fill something else out. I always just kind of play what I think it should sound like, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. Um, yeah, I play. Actually, I take that back. I am in a band that is a four piece, and that is Gang Font, which is the jazz kind of. It's a genre defying band that's not rock, it's not jazz, it's not punk, it's not fusion, but it's with Dave King from the Bad Plus,
Hmm.
and with that, I would basically, Dave's whole concept there was like, well, he and Eric Frotsky, the guitar player, would write the songs, and they just let me play whatever I wanted to it. They wouldn't even tell me what the arrangement was. They would just have me play, and it was always would always blow Dave away with what I heard. What it To me, what it sounded like. Well, this is what the bass needs to do here, um, and it works. It works out great. Uh, and actually, through all of that, um, and right as we started to talk about this, uh, it led me to go like, well, my bass playing is way more idiot than it is savant. So, uh, but it works.
No, yeah, it absolutely does. Like those songs are just like, and those lines are just so instantly like perfect for whatever like Bob or whatever Finney would have been would be doing. Well, absolutely, it's a lot of like just kind of a lot of like natural instinct is what I'm kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah,
Absolutely, and which is what I love most about this kind of music is like they're like it's it's on on its surface like it sounds like something a lot of people could do, but not a lot of people can do because there's a very kind of like attitude and like style to like how you attack the bass and how you like play those notes that is kind of difficult to replicate if you were just like looking at it from the outside. I
right.
would imagine.
And
Um,
also it's. I mean, there's a fluidity to it. It's when you're playing it. It's like it's never the exact same thing every time, even though you're playing the same song. Uh, things things change. The rooms change. The way that the sound waves travel through the room changes. Uh, it's like waiting for like a note to resolve before you go to the next note. Uh, it's not necessarily like I am like in lockstep with 4/4 time or whatever the time signature is. The time signature kind of evolves as it's being played in the room, and as the band is together and tight with that, you get those dynamics. Uh, Jimi Hendrix was the master of that. Hendrix played to his own time. Hendrix did not play
yeah.
to a metronome.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, definitely not.
and that's how I hear it. That as the music is being played, I hear things swell and build and diminish and whatever, and you play to that, um, and
Yeah.
and also to the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you always like thoughts of like how like making the crowd go off, I would imagine. Um when when Husker Du was touring, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, like when around the times of like Zen Arcade and Candy Apple Grade did like, and I know punks especially at that time didn't always have the like most open mind towards music that didn't sound like just angry yelling all the time. Did you guys get that a lot? The like you're not real punks, you don't sound punk?
Well, we always used to joke about all the bands that would out there being going like, screaming into a microphone about being, be different, but be like us. And if you're not like us, we're gonna kick your ass. It's like, um,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, we didn't necessarily, I didn't grow a handlebar mustache to be different. Grant didn't go barefoot and let his hair grow long to go against the grain. We just were like, we are who we are, and we're just gonna get out
Yeah,
and we're gonna play this music. Uh, and we didn't give a shit if people didn't like that. Uh,
right.
and I think that's the one thing that, well, one of the things that people really thought was, felt was refreshing about Husker Du, and opened opened Husker up to a lot more people. Was like, we don't give a shit what you're doing, or what you look like or how you dress or whatever. It's like, if you like what we're doing, that's great, and you should do whatever you want to do, and as long as it makes you happy. um
Mhm.
that was kind of, that was our philosophy. um we certainly did not like bands that were into, like, like, oh, you're not punk enough for me. It's like, well, fuck you, what is punk? you know um
Yeah, that's sort of kind of like dogmatic lack of self-awareness approach to it.
right, exactly. I actually did an interview with uh, a psychologist for Psychology Today a few years ago about
Mhm.
punk, and how it's like, and really, it so a band evolves. You've got a core group of people that love you from what you initially did, and that's what they want to cling to. They don't want you to evolve. But as you evolve, they get pissed off because you're not what you used
Right.
to be. And in a way, that is the most punk thing to do, is to evolve.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
And their rejection of the new stuff, or like, oh, the old stuff sounds better. That to me is always, I thought, sort of represented a lack of emotional growth on the part of the person expressing
right.
that sentiment.
I would agree.
Because right, because those albums like you make, like you could not make Zen Arcade or Candy Apple Gray today, because you're not, you or Bob are not that the same people that you were back then.
Right,
Like this Ultra Bomb record could not have come together at any other time other than this time.
right.
Um, yeah, I understand that. I under I that makes perfect sense to me,
Yeah,
because really, like when I feel like when really like angry music fans like are only like, you we only like this couple of records, what they're really saying is like, I miss being a teenager with a moderate amount of freedom and no responsibilities.
yeah,
That's what they're mourning, the loss of youth, you know.
right. Uh,
And what is more punk rock than to what is more punk rock than to evolve and to change and grow into who you will be next.
right. Yeah, exactly. And um, I had to kind of laugh a few years ago. I read an article with um, King Buzzo from the Melvins, and how he was talking about how certain punk bands got to a certain point and where did they jump the shark, right? And when did they lose their punk credibility and all this stuff? And it was like, what's this crap? It's like Husker jumped the shark with Warehouse because we evolved, right? Um, and I get what he's saying. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I love the Clash, but once they kind of recorded Sandinista, they lost me, right? Uh, but I'm sure if I go
Mm-hmm.
back and listen through all of that stuff, and after that, I would probably find stuff that I would love. Um, in a way, it's a really closed mind set to kind of have these parameters on what things need to be, and one of the things that Husker never wanted to be was something that could be easily put into a box. And I think that's exactly what Buzzo
Yeah.
was doing in this article. Was he's like, well, they don't fit in my definition of what punk is anymore. Um, so he's just evolving on a different plane than I am.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like how many of our favorite bands, we all maybe have like one or two, but there's so many that you grow with throughout the course of your life. Like that trajectory. Sometimes stuff is like, oh, this is a time capsule from my era then. Like I don't like the same shows I liked when I was 8,
Right.
you know. But I will say though, like that, like, and again, to kind of bring it back to this new record, it's perfect timing for me personally. Like I was very excited to find out that it exists, and then to listen to it and to enjoy it. And I I know you guys are gonna have an amazing tour. Um, and I look forward to it. A couple other things I would love to ask you, or just kind of like, I sometimes when I talk to musicians, I do like to ask a couple of geeky nerdy
Sure.
questions. Um, when you're getting ready to go out on this tour, what's your live rig nowadays? Has it changed much? Do you try to pare down what you have to take out with you nowadays? What do you need when you perform
Yeah.
to be
Well,
you?
basically, uh, amazingly enough, some bands manage to get out on the road without hardly any gear at all. They have, backline taken care of for them. But uh, this tour, we're going to share equipment with the Barstool Preachers. Uh, I don't know. It's. I've read that some bass players now don't even travel with amps; they just go direct into the PA, which that seems intriguing because bass amps are big
Hmm.
and they're heavy. Um, they take up a lot of room, and
Yeah.
obviously the drum kit's a drum kit. You can't make it any smaller. Um, I guess you can go with a little tiny drum kit, but you know, uh,
Right.
yeah, Finney is saying that he's good with something small on stage. And I guess the main thing is, as long as you can hear yourself on stage and the PA is adequate enough, uh, you can pare down. A couple of years ago, I saw a show where the band actually literally didn't have any amps on stage. They just played directly through the PA, and it was kind of weird. They
Uh-huh.
sounded good, but it looked weird. But I'm sure for them it was super easy because they just had like a couple of pedal boards that they had to pack up in their guitars. So uh, good on them then, right?
Yeah, that's what I've been doing a lot of lately. Like my friends who are in touring bands who have to play like the occasional house show or like basement show still have like the stacks. But the last couple of times I've played, I literally just had a bass and then a s- a pedal board with a tuner and a Sans amp on it, and got all of my sound from the Sans amp.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we're definitely going to have to kind of do something smaller because we're traveling in a small van, and after
Mm-hmm.
Vegas, we're not going to have the Barstool Preachers in their van to also carry equipment. So unless we want to have everything strapped on top of the minivan on the way home from Vegas, we'll have to. We need to figure that out before we hit the road. So
Yeah. Not yeah, which is not the most atypical way to leave Vegas with a bunch of stuff strapped to
right.
your van, I would imagine.
Yep.
It, is there a place that you would want to play a show that you haven't played yet? Whether it be with at any point in your career, is there a country or a city you haven't gone to yet?
Uh, yeah. Actually, I am really looking forward to UltraBomb getting over to Ireland. Husker never played Ireland. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
we definitely have. We've had offers from clubs in Dublin and Belfast and a couple other spots over there. Uh, haven't played Spain. Would love to play Primavera Sound. That would be awesome. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
in Barcelona. Um, hopefully, we'll get to New Zealand and Australia and possibly Japan. Who knows? But those are all places I've,
Yeah.
I've never been. Um, playing here in the States, I'm just really looking forward to getting back out and playing in cities that who's I've experienced good success in before, and
Mm-hmm.
and hope Austin's going to be like a culture shock moment because the last time I was played Austin, it was a sleepy little town, and evidently it's not like that anymore. So,
No, no. Ever since Joe Rogan located there, it's and the Tex bubbles companies started all moving there. I've heard it's changed quite a bit. My wife was just there. She had to go to South by Southwest for work, and from what she was telling me, it's a little different now because
I can believe that. Yep.
yeah, it's not like in the movie Slacker anymore. Sadly. But I think Ultra Bomb would do great in Japan. I know that Fat Wreck has this huge presence over there, so there's definitely an appetite for good punk rock
Yep.
over there. And every
Well, there's
there's
there's a great Japanese punk band called Number Girl. Um, I think they've been broken up for probably a couple of decades now, but uh, they put out a record called Seppuke, which was incredible, and it's like Husker references, replacement references all over it. It was, um, so yeah, I think Ultra Bomb would do well over there.
oh that sounds really good, cool. Actually, I wrote that down. I have a kind of big obsession with Japanese punk rock.
Oh,
There's
for sure,
so
yeah,
much
yeah.
really.
Check out that disc. It's great. It's one of my favorites. I've sold off like most of my music collection pared, or I should say pared down. I still have now I only have several hundred albums and maybe a couple hundred CDs. But
Hmm.
that's one I kept. Yeah.
Very cool. Is there another album that you wish more people knew about that you're listening to?
Uh not off the top of my head because I'm drawing a
Well,
blank. That's why. Um I oddly enough, the Spotify algorithm, after listening through the Ultra Bomb album, what it starts playing afterwards, that's been pretty good.
hmm
some and interestingly enough, a lot of Australian bands who all sound
Hmm.
an awful lot like Radio Birdman, and I fucking love Radio Birdman. So um, that's been kind of fun. So
Oh, oh, nice. I didn't know about Radio Birdman. I'll look them up
oh,
too.
Radio Birdman, they yeah. So Radio Birdman and the Saints in the late '70s, basically, they were both signed to Sire Records. They represented, Australian new wave punk music, but yeah, Radio Birdman, they're spectacular.
Very cool. I cannot wait to check them out. Um, what else can we plug here? So UltraBomb's new album "Time to Burn" is available now. You guys are going on tour in late May,
Yep.
and then there's plans for UK Europe dates later
Right.
in 2023. Anything else we can plug before we get out here, Greg?
Uh, oddly enough, there's a new Husker Du record that comes out on Saturday.
There's a new Husker Du
Yeah,
record.
it is for Record Store Day,
Uh huh.
and it is actually. Can you see it right there?
I do. Says tonight
Right.
Longhorn.
So this is a. So we put this together. It's a 2 record set. It is our very first gig at the Longhorn in Minneapolis, and then in 1979, and then it skips forward a year to 1980. Excuse me, with for side 2, and then the second disc is a show from September of 1980. It turned out so well. These are
Oh
tapes
wow.
that had never been circulated, so this is not
Mm-hmm.
all the people out there go like, "Oh, I've got that bootleg." It's like, no, you don't. Um, this turned out really great. So it's a record store day exclusive for 90 days, and I'm actually doing a couple of in stores this weekend for it. So it's I guess that's the only other thing I have.
That's very cool. I had no idea that was coming out. So a piece of Husker Du history coming out
Yep.
for Record Store Day. So it's not. So I'm guessing you and Bob are still cool nowadays.
As cool as we can be, yeah. So
Gotcha.
uh, uh, neither of us have each other on speed dial. So it's all good though, and things are working out great. Um, you know, Grant's widow Bridget is she's a sweetheart. She is she's representing his interest in the band, and we've got a fantastic person to help coordinate all of this in Dennis Pulowski, who has actually helped us out for um, probably about 15 years now. So
Well, good. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that, and I'm so glad that you're healthy and that this album came out. I'm glad you're going to be able to get back out on the road, Greg. And if you play the East Coast, I will make sure. I would love to check out the show. So I hope you guys make your
hopefully
way
in
up this
spring
way.
of 2024.
Excellent. Well, I will see you then, Greg. And thank you so much for talking to me. This was really great. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah. Thanks for having me on.
One of the things that I have observed over my times of now getting to chat with so many folks from the punk rock and pop punk scenes that I admire is how kind of just down to earth and kind of humble and enthusiastic they are about what they do. I really enjoyed that chat with Greg, and this new record, "Time to Burn," is truly amazing record. If you've enjoyed Greg's bands before, you should give yourself this album a listen. And if they're coming through your town, make sure you go out and see that tour. I'll have links to everything related to UltraBomb in the description. And if you guys enjoyed this podcast and think you know a friend who would be interested as well, you can send them to awesomedisaster.com. That has links to everywhere that you can find this podcast. We're on Apple, Stitcher, and Spotify. If you want to give us a subscribe and help share out those links, let other people know this is a cool podcast, that helps us please the algorithmic overlords, and I will be tremendously appreciative. That is our show for today. Again, if you wanted to go a little bit further in your support of the show, you can follow me. I am at Comic Will Carry on Twitter, at Will Carry 23 on Instagram, and at Between Awesome and Disaster on Instagram. And you can also, if you want, check out our merch store as well as our Patreon. Links to both of those are also available at awesomedisaster.com. I'm going into 37 optimistic and enthusiastic for what comes next. I know that this is not the age that show business breakthroughs tend to happen, but I am continuing to work in the arts in New York City, which is the thing I wanted to do since I was a kid growing up in rural Maryland. And the fact that I'm still doing that after 13 years, almost 13 years in the city, I'm very excited about. So thank you all again so much for being a part of that journey. And I will see you folks next time between Awesome and Disaster. Stay safe, get vaxxed and boosted, and stomp out fascism. Take care, everybody.